And that's another thing I want to kind of emphasize today here is that you've got to be not cocky, but confident in yourself. Not in a way that you've got an attitude or you think others are less than you, but confident in that you are whoever you are and you're comfortable with that. But I think you've got to come in the room with that attitude that I do matter and my voice does matter. My opinion matters and you're going to hear it. Like I'm going to listen to you. You're going to listen to me.
I'm so excited to have Mayor Mary Dennis here. She is a longtime mayor in Live Oak, Texas, and I'm just so thrilled. Thank you so much for being with us today. Do you want to share a little bit with our listeners about your story?
Wow. Well, I appreciate the kind words. I'm certainly excited and thrilled and honored to have been asked to be a part of this today. It's very exciting. And I never take it for granted that someone asked me to speak about my journey because my dad would always say, nobody has to be nice. I always say that everyone has a story and I'm just happy to be able to share mine here today. So I was born in a Newton, Mississippi, and my dad was in the military. We traveled around the world and, wonderful experiences. When we were in Europe, we were always going somewhere every weekend. I went to Austria, went to visit Dachau. And I remember just so many great memories of growing up overseas.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornis, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
I believe my journey began for me when I was 9 years old. I remember playing with my Barbie dolls in Spring Lake, North Carolina. My dad was stationed at Fort Bragg. And I was just playing with my little Barbie dolls and just sitting there, having a good time on a Saturday afternoon. And something that I remember, and it sounds weird when I say this, but it is a true story. Something just comes over me that says your life will be about service. And of course, at 9 years old, I had no idea what that meant. And I'm surprised that I even remember it, but I've always carried that with me from that moment, that my life would be about service to others. And so my journey has been just that in different capacities. We have different names for what I've been doing. I'm also a licensed mortician. So I've serviced families. And so that has certainly been a place of service for me. But my life certainly has been on this journey constantly, no matter what position I've been in, what place, is about serving others. So I'm very grateful for that moment. I know a lot of people struggle with their purpose in life. What am I supposed to do? Why am I here? Am I just breathing and going through the changes? But I'm very blessed in that I've known what my purpose is. Finding that path sometimes has been kind of difficult or sometimes challenging, but I've known for sure what my purpose on this earth plane is. And I find great comfort in that.
Let me just back up. Did you say mortician?
Yes. It always gets everybody's attention.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
And it is a calling. I do think it's a very special place to serve. And thank you for all of the families that you've helped through the most difficult times of their lives. And so I was the scariest person in the room. So when no one even believes this is really me, but my mother owned a flower shop that was located in a funeral home. And so she would say, well, go pin the corsage on the deceased person. And I was scared to do it, but I was not going to tell my mother that I was scared to do it because she never believed in no, or you're too afraid to do anything. So I would go up front and get one of the gentlemen to come and help me do it. Well, one day the funeral director, he says, Mary, I need help on a service. Will you go with me? I need you to wear a black dress and come help me. And I said, oh, yes, sir. I will be happy to get away from my mother for the day and get dressed out of these jeans and tennis shoes. So I went, and Charlie, this is a true story. That first service that I went on, I knew that that's where I was supposed to be. And so that began my journey. I went to school, had been out of school for a number of years, but went back to mortuary school, got my degree in applied science, mortuary science. And I'm a licensed mortician, not just a director, but I'm an embalmer also. And I've loved serving the families. Sometimes you just your presence. I call it the ministry of presence. Sometimes you don't know the words to say, or sometimes it's just not even appropriate to say anything. But I think your presence, your calmness of spirit, just maybe a smile or a gentle touch means a lot to someone going through something that difficult. So I'm very blessed again to have, to be serving still, because I keep my license is serving in that capacity.
So you are not only a mayor, but you have the heart of a first responder, because that is first responding work when others are in tragedy, sort of when the building is burning and we're the ones who run in when everyone needs to be running out towards safety. What is your take on that piece of life and support?
Well, I think that, Charlie, I've learned through the years that this death piece, it's a part of life. It is part of this journey that we call life. And when someone is in that moment, because even if you've known your loved one is going to pass away, when it happens, it's a totally different dynamic. So your entire being. And I think that it's helped me to be able to encourage, to counsel, to give good wisdom to many women, particularly women, I guess who I've dealt with the most, to help them through that crisis. Because many of them, they've lost their husbands after 30, 40 years, and they have no idea what to do. So they're struggling with, their husband's gone. What am I going to do with the house, with the car? And there's just a lot of things going. So what I advise women during that time, or anyone, don't make any major decisions that first year if you don't have to. Just kind of, see how things are going to go, see how you're going to feel as you navigate your way through something that you've not been through before. So I always try to encourage folks to just kind of take a breather. Don't let people pressure you into doing anything, but not to make any major decisions during that first year. I think it's just not the right thing to do. So I think that it's helped me to be able to encourage and to help others kind of, find their way through this kind of situation.
Well, y'all just learned something new about Mayor Dennis that I also didn't know. So we've just learned something new. We went off entire track there of what we thought we were going to talk about. So I'll bring us back, but I just had to jump in with that because I thought that was just a really cool additional layer to your already incredible story. I was going to ask, are you the first African-American female? And then I caught myself and said, well, wait, should I say, are you the first Black female? And that's where we left this conversation. And I said, no, I need to start recording. So I want to hear your answer to this so that I understand the best way to introduce you.
And I appreciate your asking, Charlie. It's something that we talk about a lot. And this is just my perspective. I don't, say it's anyone else's or whatever, but it's how I feel. And I think it's from my upbringing is that I'm a female. I'm a girl. My pigment may be a little bit different than someone else's, but I really, not that I shy away from being the first of anything. I guess in some ways, if that encourages someone or helps someone, then I'm fine with that. But it's not been a focus for me. And I think that's because I was born in Mississippi during the time of segregation. And whenever we weren't away with my dad in the military, we would spend the summers with my grandparents there. And I remember asking my mom why I wanted to go skating. And she says, you can't go. And she just kept giving me excuses why I couldn't go skating. And finally she said, you cannot go to the skating ring because it's only for white people. And I was shocked because I didn't even know, I guess, that there were white or Black people. And I just, because in the military, on all the bases where we were, all the kids were together. We went to the movies together. We did everything together. So when she said that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I can't because I'm not white. And I guess that was kind of like the moment for me that I realized that I wasn't, because in our home, it was always we never talked about color or Black or white. It was always that you can do anything you set your mind to. Just work hard, be honest, take care of what you're doing, be a person of your word. And so for me, that was the life that I knew. But when I was there in Mississippi, I was exposed to, I couldn't go because I was Black. I remember wanting to go to the theater, to the movies with my cousins. And they're like, oh no, all of the Black kids have to sit upstairs and the white kids sit down. And I was like, no, I want to sit downstairs. And so the man at the door, he says, well, you'll have to pay more money, little girl. And I said, well, that's okay, because my grandpa gave me plenty of money. So I paid whatever money he said, and I went and sat down in the Roxy Theater in Newton, Mississippi. And my family teases me to this day that I was the one who integrated that theater, because then they all started coming down. So I've just, I know this color thing is real. I'm not saying that it isn't, but to me, it's your heart. And that's what I said when I came to City of Live Oak, because there was some conversations that first meeting here at my house about, well, should we put my picture on the flyer? And I was like, yes. And someone in the room because I was the only person of color there, they said, well, no, then people will know that you're Black. And I was like, well, they're going to know that I'm Black when they see me. So I don't shy away from it, but it's not a focus. For me, it is the content of your heart and what you bring to the table. And I'm excited just to be in this earth plane doing just that.
Wow. You have been a visionary and a trendsetter from the very beginning. It sounds like integrating that theater. That's amazing.
Well, either that or a troublemaker.
Yeah, I love it. Troublemaker is good too. That's good.
It is. Like John Lewis said, some trouble is good. Some trouble is good.
That's right. Good trouble. Good trouble. And I don't want to dwell on this, but I do want to ask quickly, because a lot of my listeners struggle with how they feel about themselves, self-confidence, second guessing themselves, doubt, all of these things that kind of get in the way of our success. And there must have been a moment of, I don't want to put feelings on you, but there must have been a big feeling in the moment. And how did you learn to process that? What were your tools to become such a success, especially after going through that type of difficulty as a child?
Well, I think, again, Charlie, for me, it was my parents. Both my mom and dad were very strong. Every night we had to be home for dinner. This was years ago, but no matter what your activities were, we had to be home for dinner. And my dad would go around asking the five of us, well, what did you learn today? What did you learn today? And if he got to you and you said, well, Daddy, I didn't learn anything today, he was like, how could you go all day and not learn anything? So that next night you would be ready. And so I've always tried to learn something every day. My mother was one who really taught me that your word is your bond. And for those who maybe that sounds old fashioned or not understanding, it was that means that what you say, it matters, and you have to be true to your word. And so I think that, and always my dad always saying, and I remember my dad saying at dinner one time, he says, you've got two things against you. I was like, what, Dad? He says, you're Black and you're female. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, it doesn't mean anything. It just means you've got to work harder and you've got to be smarter. So wherever I've gone, Charlie, I go with that attitude that I'm going to work. No one's going to outwork me. I tell him if I'm in charge of digging the ditch, it's going to be the best ditch dug, and we're going to be happy. We're going to be having plenty to drink and plenty to eat. I said, but because that, the thing that was instilled in me is that you work hard, you do what's right, you don't take things that don't belong to you. If there's something you want, you ask for it. But that's really been my philosophy in my difficult times, is that try to do what's right, be a person of your word, and just try to do the right thing. And sometimes, we all fail. But we have to also remember this, Charlie. And a lady told me this when I remember I was 17. She says, honey, it's really nice when people say nice things about you and pat you on your back and say, oh, go, Mary, that's great. She said, but there will come a day when no one's going to pat you on your back. No one's going to say, good job, Mary. So you've got to learn to encourage yourself. And that's another thing, Charlie, that I really have had to focus in on many times is encourage yourself. You look in the mirror and you say, you know what? I am somebody. I do know the reason that I'm here. I do know what I want. I do know what my purpose is. And just keep yourself encouraged. So that's one of the many things that has helped me through difficult times in my life.
I don't think we can emphasize that enough, that we need to have that self encouragement. I don't want to say self-confidence. These words are so overrated and used. Nobody really even knows what they mean anymore. But to hear self-encouragement in the face of difficulty, that goes a lot to what we teach about with thought work, is that, other people's thoughts about you, they're not actually real. They're not fact. You don't have to believe them. And that how to of understanding the science behind this. And then you could say, I don't need you to encourage me. I can encourage myself. And your opinion about it actually doesn't matter because it's not a fact.
Right. And I say, what you think, that's not my problem. What I think is what matters. So you get to think what you want. It's okay. But I think we spend too much time thinking about what other people think about us. I have this thing now in my head. You don't pay rent to be in my head. So I don't have to spend my time wondering and worried about what you think about me. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
I was told that my whole life, but until I understood the how to do that, the understanding of the science and why my brain works this way and why I respond, because my brain wants me to be part of a community and my brain doesn't like that people don't like me. And it's all that survival stuff because we don't want to get kicked out of community. And I want to pivot here because we're talking about community and you're a leader of a community. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what are those pivotal moments that have helped you learn about leadership, that have taught you how to keep people together? A community is full of difficult people and difficult situations. Can you talk about those pivotal moments?
Well, I've had many, just like everyone else who's been here longer than 20 years. But I think in those times, Charlie, I always try to keep my focus on how their problems, their challenges, but how do we solve it so that at the end of the day, no matter if we've agreed or not, that we've come to at least the understanding that we will do this in an amicable way, that I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to call you out of your name, as my mother would say, but we are going to sit down, discuss this, in a civil way, in a way that we respect each other. And then once a decision is made, then we respect the decision that the majority has made. And I think my job is I have lots of different personalities that I have to deal with in my residence and the different organizations that I'm a part of. On my council, there are 5 different personalities on the city council. So it's 5 council members and myself, and plus the 122 employees that I don't deal with directly, but I do have an impact, on decisions about their jobs. And so I think just trying always to keep in mind that we've got to try to find the best solution that is best for all. And sometimes 1 or 2 are not going to be happy, but I always do know this: you cannot always please everybody all the time, and you will make yourself crazy if you try to do that. So once you find whatever the solution is that's best for everyone, make that decision, respect it, and then go with it. And that's, sometimes you have to take the hard punches, and I've had to do that too. But at the end of the day, I still come home knowing that I've done the right thing, that I've worked hard, and I try to do the right thing.
Do you have any how-to step-by-step tips on how you stay emotionally centered and regulated when you're dealing with all these different types of personalities for people coming behind you, maybe?
Oh, I think I've got a couple of tips. One thing I try to do is I try to have myself on a loose schedule. So I try to get up and walk in the mornings, about 30 minutes, nothing strenuous, just get outside and just go walk. And I don't take any calls or read emails during that time, because I said, I am worthy of 32 minutes and I'm not that important that the world is going to fall apart in 32 minutes. So I just take that time for myself. I love being outdoors. So like this morning, after I finished walking, I pull weeds in the front yard. I love digging in the ground because I just feel like we came from the dirt. And so that kind of just helps release this tension for me. So I love working outside, love, enjoying my plants, having a cup of coffee, sitting on the patio, just taking time, just kind of meditating, just getting my thoughts together. And I always say that self-care, I know that's another word that's thrown out a lot. And I kind of want to talk about that too at some point during this conversation. is that
Whenever
is
you're ready,
important.
jump in.
Well, then I'm ready. Okay.
Yeah, you may have seen that I think it's a dirty word, so I would love your take on it, and whatever your perspective is, let's do it.
I think, Charlie, now this is just my perspective again. I think we've gone a little bit off balance with all of this. And balance is my new favorite word. And I think you should take care of yourself. I'm the biggest proponent ever for taking care of yourself. However, I do believe if you take too much time and too much attention inwardly, you then are maybe focusing too much on yourself. I do think it's important, balance, is to consider others, to go out and help others, do what you can to be with others, but not spending all of your time and energy just focus in on yourself, because I don't think that's healthy either. I don't think that is healthy either. So we've got to find a balance, I think, of being able to find that place where we're peaceful and we're seeing about ourselves and taking care of ourselves. But we also have to learn to take care of others. I think it's part of really who we are. Part of that human part of us is to be in community with others. And I think part of that is giving, go sit at the nursing home and read to people. I do that sometimes.
I was going to say, I agree with you 100%. We have the data that says you can just look at things like 12-step groups. They're tough there. I've gone for some research and watched some of these, and they're amazing. And they're like, go find another person with whatever the issue is that you're there with the 12 steps to solve, and go help them. And the thing that you said that I'm so excited to hear you say, I don't think a lot of people truly understand the impact of how much time we spend, especially when we're dealing with emotional dysregulation and we're constantly upset because somebody says something to us, or we're reacting out of our survival mechanisms. All these things, even if we're not controlling it yet and we're learning to, how much time we spend thinking about ourselves during a day. Just because you may be thinking poorly about yourself is still thinking about yourself. And therefore, it's entirely self-centered. And part of the solution to that is exactly what you said. And I'm so glad to have a person whose life is given to service in so many different ways, because you're living the embodiment of that. And what kind of joy does that bring you when you're out doing service all day, so exhausted, you don't have time to think about what's wrong in your life, like
exactly. And something that I learned years ago, Charlie, is that this life thing, many times it's about a choice. I think that we have to take responsibility. Now, you can't always change the situation, but you can change your attitude towards the situation. Now, you get to decide that. Nobody gets to tell you how to think about it. So I think that a lot of times that we get to make that decision ourselves. So do I choose to be happy about it? Do I choose to be sad? And I say that every day that we wake up, we get to choose. And it doesn't mean you're going to choose bad. Nobody wants that. But bad is going to come because it's part of this life journey. Things are going to happen. Things are going to break down. Your kid's going to get sick. Your husband going to get on your nerves. But you still get to choose, okay, what is my attitude going to be about this situation?
As many of you know, I am approved now because we have so much excitement on the channel on YouTube as an Amazon content influencer. I've got a place now where I can put everybody's resources in one storefront. What's really cool is when you use the what we call affiliate links, and I'm now becoming an affiliate for a whole bunch of different things. It's all on my website at charliehornesscoaching.com, and it's on the bonus resources page. What happens is when you purchase something off of that, a portion of it goes back to the show. And so what you're doing basically when you buy from there is you're supporting the show at no additional cost to you, which is kind of like the coolest thing ever. It's going to help us continue to create content for you and bring on incredible guests that are, they blow my mind. So I'm hoping they will blow your mind too, whether it's metaphysics and psychology and theology or high fantasy romance. You're going to find your next favorite read right there. Let's go. You and I are actually on the same wavelength, Mayor. I agree 100% about so much of what you're saying. I do have one question though. Have you ever had those moments where your emotion is physiological, like you get blindsided or you deal with the fight or flight? And those are those moments where you can't choose, or maybe you pop off or react rather than respond in the middle of making difficult decisions, or just someone coming at you, conflict. How do you regulate that when you're in that moment that you can't necessarily control?
Well, I can tell you exactly when that moment was for me, Charlie. My husband, woke up one morning. I was on my way to North Carolina. He was on in his recliner watching TV. By the time I got to North Carolina, my daughter calls me. She says, "Mom, Dad is sick." So I said, "Well, let me just get on the next plane and I'll come back." But I wasn't able to get a flight back. Well, in that meantime, Charlie, my phone rings again, and it's my daughter, and she says, "Mom, Dad is dead." And I'm trying to comprehend what she's saying, and I'm thinking she's apparently lost her mind. And I hang the phone up on it because I think I can't even figure out what's going on. Well, my phone rings again, and this time it's a San Antonio police officer, and he says, "Ma'am, I am sorry to tell you, but your husband is dead." And I just couldn't even understand what was going on. Well, long story short, Charlie, my husband and I had been married for nearly 33 years. And just at that moment, and everything that went with of the funeral and the everything that went along with his death, because he was at work when this happened as a San Antonio firefighter. After everything's over and, we've had the service, everybody's gone home. My grandmother, who had come from Mississippi for the service, was here at my home. I was in the kitchen. She was in the den. And she says, "Baby, come here." And I went and sat down beside her. And she said, "I'm going to tell you, you have two choices." She said, "You can sit here and die, or you can get up and flap your wings." And Charlie, I'm like, my husband just died. I don't even know what that means. But she says, "You have two choices. You can sit here and die, or you can get up and flap your wings." I walked back to the kitchen with tears in my eyes saying, "I'm going to flap my wings." I didn't know what that meant or where that was going to take me, but I knew I had to make a choice that day. And I chose to say, "I'm going to flap my wings." And that's why I'm so intent on saying about the choice. That was not something I would have chosen, but it was something I was given that I had to deal with. And I had to make a choice. Would I sit there and die? It's been 17 years. And I don't know if I've done well at it, but I've been up flapping my wings because I chose not to die.
Mayor, I think you bring us to an incredible point. And even though it's been so many years, I'm sorry for your loss. And it's hard to believe somebody so effervescent and joyful and inspiring like yourself would have ever been through something like that. Because, we're taught that if we're happy and we do everything right, nothing bad happens to us. And like you said, life is 50-50, and we have to get up and flap no matter what, and rewire our brains and our attitudes and make choices. And I would never have guessed you'd been through something like that, because you do flap and you're soaring.
Well, I tell you, Charlie, and that's why I really, for me, sharing this is hopefully it will help someone else. And just one other thing I wanted to say, Charlie, which was so real for me, a moment during that time, is that I lay in my bed and I was like, "God, I don't know if I can do this. I just don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this." And I could hear my husband's his voice in my head saying that if your faith cannot help you during the toughest times in your life, then your faith is no good. And that's another thing that helped get me through that, is that I could hear him saying that. I would see an ambulance going by for years, for months at least. I would just break down and cry, because I would just think about him. But I always hear him saying in my head that if your faith is not good enough to help you through the most difficult times, then your faith is no good. But I knew my faith was good. And so I'm thankful for this journey. I always, many times you want to say, God, why me? Or why did this happen? But now I've learned to say, why not me? That apparently there's something in here that's going to help me and hopefully help others.
That is so powerful. And I'm taking a moment to just feel so honored that you would share such a personal and life-changing pivotal moment in your life and your family's life and give us a peek behind such a powerhouse woman. So thank you for modeling that for us and sharing with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to continue to ask you some questions, but I don't want to just sort of pivot away. So was there anything else that you wanted to share about getting through these types of difficulty? Anything you learned? I just don't feel like, no, now let me ask you about mayorship,
Oh, no. I appreciate you. You can't control others, but you do have some control over yourself, over your thoughts, over your feelings, over your attitude. And that was another thing my mother always taught us, was that you have a good attitude. She said, you'll go far. And so those are things that we can control. And for the things that we can control, I think that it is important that we do that the best that we can. And so anyway, it's really a segue into, this part of my journey. That was in 2010. I had been on city council for two years. And, that started because when we moved to this house, our street was a dirt road. And my husband, I'd been bugging him about buying a house. I finally found the house that I liked. And so he said, so we paid this much money for a house on a dirt road? And I said, yeah, because it reminds me of my grandma's house in Mississippi. Well, we move in and a neighbor comes up and says, we're going to go down to City Hall and see about getting our road paved. So be ready first thing tomorrow morning. And I didn't want to tell him that I didn't want to go. But anyway, I was ready and we went down and eventually got the road paved. And I was a bit, fascinated by the platting and all the things that had to be done to get the road paved. And while I was there, someone said, well, we've got an opening on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you like to serve? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'll give it a try. So I served there for several years, tried to learn everything I could about planning and zoning. And so later someone said, well, we've got an opening on the city council. Would you run? And I said, well, I've never run for any elected office, but I'll give it a try. Got out, knocked on doors, and my team runs in after the polls have closed, and they're like, Mary, you've lost by 25 votes. Well, I thought that's pretty good. No one knew me. I just had moved to Live Oak. So after that, I came home, and a couple months later, one of the council persons went overseas, and the council appointed me to finish the rest of that term. Well, after that term, then someone said, well, would you run again? And I said, well, I'll give it a try. So I got out, knocked on doors. My team runs in and they're like, Mary, you've lost by 2. And so I was like, 2 votes? That's fine. So I come home happy and content. Someone resigns, a few meetings into the council and I get appointed. So I get to finish the rest of that term. So I'm done. I've done 2.5 years on council, did the planning and zoning. I'm ready to move on to something else. My daughter calls me and Christina says, Mom, I think you should be the mayor. And I said, no, Christina, I don't think so. I'm not even sure what the mayor does. What do we know? Well, anyway, I did put my name in the hat, and it was myself, another council member, and a man who had been the previous mayor for 8 years. And so the 3 of us in the race, and 2 of us tied. So there's a tie between myself and the former mayor. And he said to me, well, this is Texas and we can flip a coin and decide. And I was like, no, I'm from Mississippi. We're not doing that. So anyway, we had the runoff and I was successful in the runoff. And that was in 2010 when I first became mayor here in city of Live Oak. And so I've been here. The terms are only 2 years, and I've not had an opponent since then. And I am very happy, excited, just as enthusiastic as I was that first day serving in this space.
14 years and no opponents. I think that's a testament
well, they've
to...
come, but they changed their mind. They one man he signed up and he's like, well, I shook his hand and I said, well, sir, I'm looking forward to talking to you about what I've done. And by Friday of that week, he called the office and said, never mind, take my name off the list. So I don't know. I'm hoping that means that I'm doing a great job.
I think you are. I think you are. So how do you build these alliances and get this support and maintain this community? That place is a very tight knit community, and it loves its space and it's it's thriving. And how do you do that?
Because of this philosophy of mine is that relationships matter. So you have to take time, take energy to foster relationships. And that's something that I've really tried to do with my council, with my 17,000 residents. Someone said, you probably know all of them. I know most of them. But and with our mayors in this region and across the state and also on a national level, that I've been very fortunate to be able to serve in that capacity also, but building relationships, fostering them. Maybe you're not going to talk every day, but a text, once a month, send a text, how you doing? Just thinking about you. So I think fostering those relationships to me has been key to my success.
What are the qualities of the effective leaders that you are surrounded by, and also that you feel you would highlight from your own experience, especially from those coming behind you, or maybe they're mid-career now looking at some of these bigger offices and women, holding cool offices like you?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I have a couple. One of them is, Charlie, is I think that for me being a leader, I really struggle when I hear people say that to me because I don't really feel that or just really comfortable in that space. But I do think that when, to me, my definition of a good leader is someone who encourages those on the team to be their very best and give them the tools that they need to be their very best, that you want their success as much as you want your own. But I think one of them, for me, is the most important, is for the leader to want success for those on the team, want it so much that you give them the tools that they need, encourage them to do just that the people beside you, coming alongside you, are successful. And to me, that gives me the biggest thrill.
And what about things you've learned along the way that you wish you would have known? And I always love to ask this question because one of the big things that I believe in is if we equip folks, especially women, walking into difficult situations, if we can equip them to be aware that, yeah, there's still socialization, there's still race and gender issues. If you aren't blindsided by these things and they're coming, you can be more successful. Have you learned any of those things along the way?
I certainly hope so. One of the things I wish I would have known, and now I say this to women all the time, is that use your voice. Your voice has to be heard. And so I think that because I was very timid growing up, just kind of a really quiet, shy child, I sort of brought that into my adulthood. But I've come to realize that my voice does matter and that it's going to be heard. And so I walk in the room with that attitude. I hope it's not a bad attitude, but I do walk in the room with the attitude that my voice matters and it's going to be heard. So I'm at the table for a reason. Because I always say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I'm not on the menu. I'm at the table.
And do you have moments where you question that? And how do you get yourself through that? How do you do the self-encouragement in those moments?
Well, Charlie, because the business that I'm in is mainly male dominated. And certainly, so that's people is that a problem? For me, it's not a problem. It could be, and it has been maybe challenging at times because I have early on would walk in saying, I don't belong here. I'm not smart enough. I don't have all of the credentials. I don't have the past. I don't have, my uncle's not a senator. But I do know this, that I walk in the room comfortable in myself. And that's another thing I want to kind of emphasize today here is that you've got to be not cocky, but confident in yourself. Not in a way that you've got an attitude or you think others are less than you, but confident in that you are whoever you are and you're comfortable with that. But I think you've got to come in the room with that attitude that I do matter. And my voice does matter. My opinion matters, and you're going to hear it. Like, I'm going to listen to you. You're going to listen to me.
What about emotional intelligence can you share with women so that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter? We have to show up and do our jobs. And, we have to learn that, like, society may not change. We can't change people's hearts and minds. We can't make people be kind and decent. So we can spend the rest of our lives being upset about that, or we can learn and be equipped from people that have done this before. So what do you say to this younger generation that is entirely confused right now?
Well, I say really what you said, Charlie, is that it's not going to change. We're not going to probably, you can't change the heart of a person, as you said. And what it is, what it is. So how do we deal with it? How do we move forward in what our purpose is? And again, I guess it's back to that choice thing and the way that people think of you, of me. I can't change that. I can't. And I don't even waste any energy on it anymore. I used to kind of care, but now I'm way too old. Life is way too short. I'm not going to waste any energy on anything that I cannot change, but I know I can change myself. So again, I think it's back to just having that confidence, not the cocky, but confidence in yourself that I can do this job as good as anyone else. I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to work hard at it. And that's what it is. Maybe we're spending too much time trying to change people, change their mind, change their attitude. We're just spinning their wheels. It's not going to happen.
You have overcome a lot of things as a woman. You have been successful at that. People love you. They want you to stay. They want you to keep leading them. And I need people to see models of what can be done. At the end of the day, we learn it doesn't matter what other people think. And like you said, do the work, show up, work hard, care about people, relationships. Like if we can lean into those things and not sit around feeling terrible about ourselves, I think that would change a lot of what's happening right now. Do you have anything else to say about your resilience and how you just keep doing this every day and not letting your emotional life drag you down if it starts kind of taking over?
Well, I think, Charlie, something that you've said really resonates with me, and that's the modeling. I saw this strength in my grandmother. I saw this strength in my mother, who started her own business and had some very difficult times doing that. But she prevailed. She had a very successful flower shop, Flowers by Mary. It was there on W.W. White Road. And I've tried now, and what really gives me a great deal of joy and peace is that I see that my daughter has those things now, and she's passed it on to her two daughters. And she says, when I see my girl saying, you know what, I'm just going to work it out. I can't figure it out right now, but I'm going to work through it. She said, that makes me feel good. She says, because I remember you saying that to me, is that figure it out. Figure it out. It may not be the A plan, may not be the B plan, but whatever the plan is, figure it out. I used to work at the funeral home. My director would say, Mary, you're the only person I know that comes to the table with an A, B, and C plan. I said, yes, sir, I do. Because whatever the plan, we got to figure it out. It may not work this way that I thought it was. It may not work that way, but we're going to figure it out. And I think just those types of modeling, because I'm wondering if our young women are seeing this. And I'm really big on that too, is that I think that we do have a responsibility to those coming behind us, those who are watching us. And so I think if the women were to see more of this kind of strength and to see it modeled in the women that they look up to, their mothers, their aunts, or women in their circle. And I've been very blessed. I've had some amazing, amazing women in my circle. My mother-in-law, Sammy L. Dennis, was one who really, really just kind of saw something in me that I didn't see at the time. But I think that I don't know if mentoring is a word because sometimes that kind of gets a little convoluted, but I think encouraging others, and that's what I try to do, is just try to encourage others to, as you said, to work hard, be the best that you can, be kind. And I'm hoping that the younger women, that they will see that, and then that will just kind of inspire them to be all that they can be also.
Absolutely. And I just have sort of an impromptu question I thought about, but when we're talking about the resiliency of our younger generations and modeling for them, I have noticed, and I don't know if you've picked up on this as well, the younger generations don't really put up with as much stuff as as I did, and probably even more so that you did. They are much more justice oriented. They have a lot, and not all of them, obviously, but my children and their friends and my friends' children, they don't see the same divisions in people that many of us were raised to. Like you said, you didn't know about this sort of, you said the color thing until you were older. I don't think kids are born that way. I think they're raised and socialized into a lot of this. And this new generation coming up, they don't tolerate a lot of stuff anymore. They really don't. So how do we teach them the difference between this is what we're going to put up with, this is what we're not going to put up with, this is how I'm going to change and accept and understand that we can't change hearts and minds of people. And this is the line where this is about justice. Like, I'm going to go march, or, the young kids, and they're just out there trying to change the world. And I'm so excited. I want to encourage them. I don't want to stifle that. But at the same time, there's that piece of responsibility and just moving on. Do you have?
And I think you're right. I think you're right, Charlie. They're a different breed, because I have like the 43-year-old and I've got the 22-year-old and I've got the 17-year-old, my two granddaughters. And their attitude is a lot different than what I'm used to. But I love it because I learned so much from them. And you're right. They're not going to take too much. They're like, oh no. They're like, oh no, Nana, we're not doing that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I love that about them. I think that it's good. I think that we could probably all benefit from that in some ways. But again, it's back to that balance. We've still, have got to teach them something like, well, you're right. But however, this is a system, and perhaps you've got to learn to work within the system until you're able to get in there and change it. So I think those type of conversations with them. But I'm like you. I love their energy. I love their no nonsense. No. Oh, but I love it.
So we've got to work within the system before we can get in there and change it. Could you say a little bit more about that? I think that's a wonderful way to look at that.
Many systems are broken and many systems are bad. But if you don't get in, if you're not at that table where the decisions are made, then it's going to keep on going that way. And I say that probably I but volunteered for one of the utilities here in San Antonio. And they were saying, well, we've got all these great programs of how we can help people with their utility bills, and they can just do this and get online. And I said, well, what about the people who don't have a computer at home? How do they find out this information? They were like, well, we didn't think of that, ma'am. And I said, well, do we have it in Spanish? No, we don't. I said, well, okay, we need to have it in Spanish. And we also need to go to their homes and deliver this information, or places where people who need the information can get it, because everybody does not have a computer at home. So being at that table, being in that room, having my voice heard, to me made a difference. Now they actually have a team that goes into the community physically, knocking on doors, passing out the information, saying this is how we can help assist you. And also the brochures are in Spanish.
I think that's really important for a teaching moment in this episode, because another trend that I have seen is when we come into contact with another human who doesn't have our own experience, is from a different social location, may not have experience with the same thing, that whatever the issue is that we're, really pumped up about and want to go out there and change the world about. I mean, if there's a lot of people that don't have the same experience as we do. And yet I see when somebody makes a mistake, they don't say the right thing, they get attacked. And what I'm hearing from you is empathy.
I believe it's a human quality. And I don't know if it's something mystical that, we make a big mystery about, but I really think it's a human quality that we empathize with others. Doesn't mean we're thinking alike or understand you alike, but I'm willing at least to consider that you are different than me. And that is okay. I don't see why I say celebrate the differences. Don't make a bad thing of it. Celebrate the differences. And so if we kind of have that in mind, thinking that you are different than me, but that's okay. I can learn from you. You can learn from me. And I think that I wish it were something that I could just spread across the world, is just being empathetic to another human being, This is not, it shouldn't be this difficult.
When we're talking about the younger generation, when it's something where they feel it's a justice oriented situation, can you be empathetic with people that you vehemently disagree with on like moral and justice oriented issues? How do we do that? There's so much of that out there right now. Do you have any suggestions?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew the answer to that, Charlie. I'd be happy to share it. But I think that it's back to being civil, to just realizing that we are all frail human beings. None of us are perfect in any way. And even at our very best, we're still horrible. So I think just understanding that that person is another human being. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe I don't agree with, because we've had these conversations in my own family. Like, this is something that's really hard for me. I'm struggling to try to understand it, but we still have to say at the end of the day that I love you. And, no matter what, I love you. I'm not going to just throw you away because we think differently or feel differently about something.
I want to bring this back to my whole thesis on thought work. I hear something that you're saying that really resonates with me, that is sort of something I've been toying with. And that concept is, if our brains are generating thoughts, which are just words running through gray matter, and they're based on our own story, social location, experience, what we were raised to believe, who told us what to believe, all of those words that are generated through our brains are not fact. They cannot be proven in a court of law. And what that also means is the same words generated in other people's brains, even if they're hateful, are not fact. I want to wrap this up with the concept of emotional intelligence, because I have a level of emotional intelligence today that thought work has taught me, that when someone comes at me with something really ugly and they have the nerve to open their mouth and say it, that right there tells me that they are an emotionally dysregulated person, because they believe their thoughts to be fact so much that they're willing to die in a ditch over it, lose a relationship over it, have a fight over it. But those thoughts are not real. They're opinion. And most of those opinions are not the universal you that I'm talking about. They're not yours. They've been sort of implanted into your brain from experience and socialization. And I feel like if people could truly understand that our thoughts are not real, our opinions are not real, they're not fact, and they're all subjective. And if I have the freedom to have whatever thought I want, I have to give you the freedom to have whatever thought you want. But then you brought that word of civility in. Otherwise, now we've transgressed a significant boundary, which is that civility piece. How do we teach people that it really is important, back to where you started, other people's thoughts and opinions, as long as they're not physically touching us, they don't matter. They're not real. And we don't have to get into a fight about it.
One thing that I've learned from my daughter is that she says, Mom, opinions are free and everybody gets to have one. So that's been my thinking now for the last couple of years, is that opinions are free and everybody gets to have one. So good. You tell me yours, I'll tell you mine, and we'll go have a cappuccino. But you're right. It's your opinion, and it's not that, but it's the way you feel about it. And I may not like it or agree with it, but I respect it. And I'm like, okay, let's go eat. Let's go get a taco. But I just think sometimes we are too serious about things that are really not that serious, because we'll be on to something else next week or tomorrow, even by the evening. So let's just listen to the opinions. And like you say, if you're not physically hitting me or bothering me or, hurting me in that type of way, then I'm okay. And then again, Charlie, then I have the choice to not be in your company, because I get to choose who I spend time with. So
Boundaries.
It's okay.
healthy boundaries.
Exactly.
It's like
exactly.
There's this whole list,
Right.
You
It's
have
called,
to approach it with empathy.
exactly. Go to voicemail. It's all good.
Go to voicemail. Yeah, I'm hearing this list from you, and I hear empathy. I hear civility. I hear allowing their own belief systems and thought processes. I also hear that piece that I think is very important, because it was important to straighten me out years and years ago, is to stop taking ourselves so seriously, stop thinking about ourselves all day long, go help another human being. That'll make you feel better. That'll give you a shot of dopamine, which is a great counter to feeling bad. I'm hearing all of these like step-by-step things. It's almost like a formula. If we have all these things, we can be emotionally intelligent and we can be successful.
Well, I rely on your expertise in that area. Mine is just from my little life experience thing, and just hoping that that it's something that would help someone in some way. And then I think then I've done well. Do
you want to leave any of our younger generation with any thoughts or last minute advice or experiences?
Well, just that you are important, that everybody is here on purpose. You're not a mistake. You're not just here for no reason, but there's something in you that you need to give, something that you need to release that the world needs. So take your gift, whatever it is, make the best of it. Enjoy this journey. It's ups and downs. It's good and bad, but it is a journey. So enjoy it the best way that you can, and try to bring others along with you and to make this world a better place.
And I want would you tell us one more time, what was the phrase that your husband would say to you about faith?
That if your faith can't help you in your most difficult time, then your faith is no good. But the faith is good, so it will take you through. You've just got to choose to believe it.
And would you tell us his name?
Roger Dennis Jr.
Roger.
He loved his junior, Roger Dennis Jr.
So we're going to lift up a thank you to Roger for providing those words of wisdom for us. Was there any other pivotal moments in your career that taught you or formed you into who you are today? Anything we forgot?
I think that one thing that sort of comes to mind right now is that I had thought about being the president of the Texas Municipal League, and it's a huge organization that represents over 1,200 cities in Texas. And so I said to one of my colleagues, I said, I think I want to run for president. And he says, I think you should. Well, I went in and did the paperwork and had the interview. And later that day, they called me and they said, you've been selected as president of the Texas Municipal League. And that was such an honor to serve in that space. No one in our small cities had ever done that before. So it was certainly an exciting time for this Northeast area here in Live Oak. But it was very good. But I didn't know if I would get it, but I knew I was going to try, because I've always known this too, that no is not a bad word. It's just a word. I'm not afraid of it.
No is not a bad word. It's just a word.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just so glad that you had time for us today. Thank you for your wisdom. And I hope that maybe you'll come back on sometime and update us on how things are going, and bring your effervescent self, reminding us that life is 50-50 and we can still choose joy.
Well, thank you again for your time, Charlie.